Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast presented by Exo Mountain Gear. This is episode number 554, and our guest is one of you guys, a listener of the show. Blake joins us to tell us the story of his very first elk hunt. He was able to join a couple of buddies who had been out west to hunt elk before, but Blake, being from Arkansas, had never done a hunt like this. And ultimately, at the end of 12 days, he filled his tag on a great bull. What's also interesting is that Blake reached out to me after hearing Ryan's story. So Ryan was a guest earlier this fall in episode 546, and Ryan and Blake ran into each other in the field on their elk hunts and crossed paths. And then Blake actually heard Ryan's show and reached out to me, not actually to get on the podcast, but just to share a little bit of his story, his elk success, and some feedback on our pack, which Blake uses. But once I saw that email and started talking with Blake, I knew we needed to get him on the podcast. And having now had this conversation with Blake, I'm so glad I did. You guys are really going to enjoy this one. As always, we appreciate you guys tuning in and your support of the show. If you have any guest suggestions, topic suggestions, or questions for us for the show, just send an email to podcast@exomountaingear.com. It would be great to hear from you. Right now, let's get right into this conversation with Blake. Well, Blake, thanks for joining the podcast, man. I'm super excited to chat. We don't have we've never met. We haven't talked too much about what we're going to talk about today. We'll tell the story in a second on how this podcast came to be. But before we get into that specifically, just a little bit of context for who you are, where you're coming from, just so listeners get to know you just a little bit. Feel free to keep it super short or share what you want.
Yeah, man. Live down in a little town called Falk, Arkansas. Grew up hunting my whole life, and big passion of mine is turkey hunting. Absolutely love to turkey hunt and love to bow hunt. Those are my two biggest passions as far as hunting goes, and so because of that, I've kind of pretty much based, I guess, my work life around that. Started out right out of high school, kind of working in an archery shop, and eventually started managing that archery shop, and was in an archery shop setting for about 9 years. And you hear stories all the time about people going elk hunting and deer hunting, and they're going on all these awesome hunts, but you happen to be working when when you need to be hunting. So that got old after a while, and just one of those God things that I had an opportunity to join the Arkansas Game and Fish as a wildlife manager, and man, he worked it out amazingly where I couldn't deny his glory on it, and I just man, I one thing led to another, and I was a wildlife manager for a big WMA down here called Sulphur River Wildlife Management Area. It's about 17,000 acres. A bottomland hardwood forest, and we do all kinds of management practices on it. Just blessed to have been kind of in the outdoor industry, and also in the outdoors with everything that I do. I guess that's what I do, but I guess who I am is just a child of God that loves the outdoors, man. That's all I am.
That's awesome, dude. Do you have I didn't hear anywhere in their education wise. Like when I hear wildlife manager, I think of, someone who went to college and
Yeah.
studied, a bunch of different fields like biology, ecology, whatever, different programs at different schools. But do you have education in that led you to that?
So when I said it was it was all God, that's kind of part of what I'm talking about. I do not have a college degree in that field, but just so happened I got hired on. They saw me fit, I guess, to be in that position, and I've learned everything that I know as far as managing through the job.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the few, I think, in the whole agency that does not have um, a degree. And I got grandfathered in. Now you absolutely you have to have a degree to have the job that I have. So it's
Hmm.
just a blessing to be able to have it.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I mean that would be my assumption in almost every state, especially with I don't like with these agencies being governmental, and I just assumed there was like a lot of standards and regulations, and that was a mandate, which
Yeah,
surprises me there even was a way to get grandfathered in. Not that I
yeah,
think it makes you incapable or like unqualified, because as you said, like I mean, there's so much you learn, right? Like you have these guys who you're working with who have, I'm sure, many years or many decades of experience, and there's theory you would pick up from education, no doubt. But yeah, I'm sure learning directly from the people who've been there and done that and been doing it a long time is invaluable.
yeah, man. Talking with my supervisors and everything, a lot of them obviously they all have degrees, and they said, man. We didn't hardly learn anything in school. We learned it all, on the job and boots on the ground. So it's I hopped in, obviously had some general knowledge because I've hunted my whole life and have just been, infatuated with wildlife and hunting in general and just man, it just the help to transition into this position that I'm in now. So
Cool.
yes, sir.
Well, this podcast came together. I just looked, it was exactly a week ago, like almost to the minute as of the time we're recording anyway. I don't know when this episode will be released exactly, but as the time of you and I talking, yeah, like I said, almost a week ago to the minute, you sent an email, not about getting on the podcast, but essentially the connection was we recently released this episode with Ryan about his solo elk hunt. He's from Texas. And he mentioned in there running into some different folks in different ways. Um, for people who may be listening, that episode with Ryan was 546. So if you want to go hear that episode, that's what we're referring to. But in that, there was like this discussion where he ran into this hunter from Arkansas that was like 10 miles in, and then I guess you heard that and was like, wait a second, that was me.
Yeah.
And then so I thought that was cool. But then also in your email, you mentioned it was your first elk hunt. Um, yeah, and just what a test it was. Like you were out there on your own for 12 days and just the lessons to take from that as a first time elk hunter. I was like, man, there's got to be like I look at that stuff and I'm like, it's so cool that we had this podcast with Ryan within a matter of literally of days. He had ran into you on the mountain, but you heard about it on the podcast. And it was just like one of these small world, like, yeah. And then I saw more of your stories. Like, let's just get on a podcast. Let's talk. Like, let's tell more of not that connection only, but like your hunting experience. So that's how this came together, dude. It's wild.
Yeah, man, it's definitely no coincidences in that. God had his hand in it from the beginning. It's pretty amazing to see how it's all unfolded. I will preface, I was not solo hunting. I had two other guys with me. So what Ryan was doing was, man, that took some serious, um grit and toughness to do. Being
Yeah.
my first time, I got invited by a couple of guys, great guys. They have been doing it for about 10 or 12 years, I want to say, and invited me to come along. So that's what I did. So I was with them, and I ended up one guy, which I'll mention later on um, in the story, but ended up getting some health complications and had to go down. So it was just me and one of the other guys that ended up actually killing on the last day.
Yeah, I think I said on your own. By that I just meant like regular guys, like on
Oh
a
yeah.
not guided hunt type thing. Yeah,
Oh
not
yeah.
solo. Good clarification.
We're balling on a budget over here. We gotta do it.
Are those guys you just mentioned, how that came together, are they local to you? Like at least relatively, also from Arkansas, all that good stuff?
So actually, they are about 3 hours away from me in central Arkansas. Met them through an archery shop. Actually, we had put in an archery shop up there, and so I met them while I was working in that archery shop. You get to meet a lot of different people and form some really cool relationships when you're in an archery shop setting. It's almost like the coffee shop. Everybody goes there and talks about anything and everything, and just man, hit it off with the guy. His name's Tim Mitchell. He's a great guy, a great Christian guy, and he's just kind of been since I met him from then, he's kind of been a mentor of mine, and we not lost touch. I since moved back down to Fouke from this area was Cabot, Arkansas, and we've stayed in touch and just man have done several hunts, whitetail hunts since then. And he was like, "Man, you've got to go, to Colorado with us," because he was very passionate about it, loved it, and I've always wanted to go. And I don't want to say I never thought it was possible. I just didn't think with me having zero experience. What all went into it, which, like I said, I've turkey hunted my whole life and absolutely loved to turkey hunt. I got bit by the traveling turkey hunting bug back in 2013, and man, have just kind of immersed myself in that all public ground. And he just kept talking about, man, it's turkey hunting on steroids. You got to go. It's awesome. And I was like, man, I don't really know that anything could be better than turkey hunting, but man, I get to incorporate a bow, and they've got lots of bone on top of their head and they're screaming at you. I was like, man, it does sound pretty amazing. So I said, yeah, man, I'll go with you. And we started planning it about 3 years ago, to go. And so
Yeah. What was the so he's been going for years, it sounds like consistently. Why was there a 3 year like phase of commitment to execution? Was that just getting a certain tag? Was it
yeah,
you
yeah,
and
that was
logistics and finances? What was it?
kind of all the above, but primarily just waiting to get drawn for a certain unit. Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming you started from like ground zero then. Like you hadn't been building points, it doesn't sound like, right?
No, no, I did, and it I was new to all that. I didn't under yeah, I mean I understood it a little bit through the turkey hunting world. There was different states that I've hunted that you had to have a point or two to be able to get drawn for. So I kind of understood it in that aspect, but it was the first time I'd really had to build multiple years to
Hmm.
get to a state to go hunting. Other than I've got I believe 5 points for Iowa, so that'll be on the agenda in the next couple of years. But as far as Washington goes, but like I said, for elk, this was all new, definitely.
Cool. How many states have you hunted birds in?
Oh gosh, probably man, around 11, I
Oh
think.
wow.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
I've been all the way up to Idaho and Washington and all the way down as far as South Florida. So,
That's
yep.
cool.
Yeah, man, it's a blast, but elk hunting is it may end up taking the cake. I don't know.
Well, just keep both. You don't have to pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, different seasons, man. Well, to cut ahead, when you emailed me, you also sent me pictures of a freaking gorgeous bull. So yeah, you guys were successful. Stud bull, very spoiled for your first elk for
Oh
sure.
man. And yeah, I fully understand that. Definitely these guys that I was going with, man, they've been probably like I said 10 to 12 times and they've each only killed one bull apiece. So I knew
Oh wow.
going into it, like I did not expect this at all. In fact, I honestly um my buddies probably don't want to hear this, but I didn't expect to really kill anything. I just I knew, dues were probably gonna have to be paid and
Uh-huh.
tough hunt and low odds and um man, I knew going into it, but God had other plans.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it there too, and I mean, I'll mention this up front, but I don't want to like necessarily skip ahead to the end of the story either. It came at the very end of like a long hunt. I think you said 12 days in the field, setbacks, and then even at the end, like it came down to the quite literally the end of even that day. So, I mean, just that's like just a point off right off the bat. It's such a difference between I mean, just time in the field, man. That's all the point I'm trying to make up front. So many guys, and we talked about this with Ryan in his podcast, but if you go out and you only have 5, 6, 7 full hunting days, like say you even had 10, like which is a lot, right? To have 10 actual hunting days when you factor in travel for guys coming out of state, that's a lot of days. But if you would have had a 10-day hunt, you wouldn't have killed a bull.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely time in the field was a huge factor in killing that bull. And I've known that kind of because you do these out of state turkey hunts, and it's obviously it's clearly it's easier than killing an elk. But just to put it on a smaller scale, I mean, you set up to hunt 2 or 3 states in 5 days. Sometimes you get some intel, sometimes you just you hit the nail on the head and you end up sitting under one. But most days it takes 2 or 3 days to find the birds and get in them. And I knew going into this it was going to take a while to find and get in elk, and I didn't, working in the archery shop, I'd heard tons of stories of people going out west elk hunting on public land, and you always hear, man, we didn't find them until the end of the day or the end of the week, and so they set it for a week long hunt, and it seems like they didn't start finding elk until the end of the hunt, and then it was time to go home, and so going elk hunting for me is a big to do. Obviously, being in Arkansas, it's a long ways away. Time frame wise, I knew I wanted to spend a lot of time out there continuously, so saving up vacation time, and even just especially this year going elk hunting. The financial aspect of it. It when you don't have anything other than other than your bow and your arrows and some camo, getting into elk hunting, yes, you can probably do it more budget minded, but um, I've just always been the type if I could buy the best I could possibly buy to make my experience that much better and to make me more successful, that's what I'm gonna do. So, some things obviously didn't spend as much on, some things I spent a lot on, but it's a big to do. So I knew going into it, I wanted plenty of time um, to be able to spend in the field to be able to find elk and be successful. So,
What were some of the, it doesn't have to just be gear, but I did want to circle back to the beginning. Once you knew, all right, we've been talking about this hunt, I know who I'm going with. You guys had a unit obviously picked out. When you knew this was the year, like when you knew you got that tag, what were some of the things that it was like, all right, got to kick this thing into high gear and figure it out. It's real now. Yeah, where did you focus on? Just preparation, planning, logistics, gear, like all that stuff. Like, what did you find to be either most daunting in a sense, or looking back now with hindsight, like most valuable?
man, so two different things I would say. What was daunting to me, the biggest, and not even coming from the physical aspect of getting ready for a hunt, but just the preparation, that not knowing anything and the vastness of information that's out there. That was the biggest thing to me because I wanted to know everything I could possibly know and never been before. You don't know gear wise what you're gonna like and what's gonna work while you're actually out there. Yeah, you can camp in the backyard, a couple nights or whatever it may be, but it's truly it's not the same. And so that was the biggest thing for me was like narrowing down my gear and doing all the research to figure out what I needed to take up on that mountain. And that's, man, I just want to thank y'all for that because the resources that y'all put out there between the podcasts and videos and the content on the website, on the XO website, man, it's extremely resourceful. Um, Especially for somebody who's never done it but wants to be as efficient and successful as they can in the backcountry. That was the biggest thing. That was the most daunting task was figuring out what I wanted to take up there. Um,
Hmm.
because once you're up there, you're up there. You can't
Yeah.
go, I mean, I guess you can go back to the truck, but it was a hike. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it reminds me of the stark contrast of when I like just regular dude in Missouri wanted to start hunting out west, and elk hunting, archery elk hunting in particular. Um, and I didn't know anybody who did it, and just committed to going on my own. And in all reality, it wasn't that long ago, but how much the landscape of information has changed is like you almost just said, hey, there's so much information, maybe almost too much information, and it's hard to figure out like what matters, what doesn't. Whereas not that long ago, dude, it was like there was nothing. Like a dude from Arkansas, a guy from Missouri who wants to go archery elk hunt out west and didn't know anybody. It's like there was no Onyx maps, there was no Go Hunt, there was no podcasts, there was no real YouTube content. Like all of the resources just weren't there. So it's interesting to me to think through, man, if I was starting now, it's a totally different problem. When I started, there wasn't enough information. It was quite literally like books and some random like website stuff versus now it's like, dude, it's information overload, you know?
Yeah. Between that and like I said, the guys that I went with, they are in their mid 50s and these dudes are hardcore. Like they like you said, they started elk hunting and doing all that before there was any digital anything really as far as maps and content and learning this and learning that. They just went, man, and learned it over the 10 or 12 years. So I was very blessed to have that knowledge to be able to lean on as well. Um, yeah, man, it's crazy listening to how they did it and how you're talking about to how I was able to do it. But it's also, I mean, if you kind of think about it, it's kind of a double-edged sword because
It is, yeah.
while that is awesome and it is great, to have new hunters and people need to experience new adventures and be able to get into things, it also does create kind of more competition and just more people out in the woods, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but for public land, it can make it more challenging, which is kind of kind of where what we ran into in our hunt.
How how did you both plan for and then also execute the hunt like from a logistics perspective? So I'm assuming you're going with these guys like as you said, they've been doing it a decade or more. They kind of have their program, their style. I know you guys were deep in there, but did you like go in and set up a base camp and just hunt from there? Were you mobile and kind of in and out and moving around? Like what was the actual way that you plan to execute the hunt and spend time?
Yeah, so kind of I'm an invite with them and was just paying attention on how they did everything and they've always kind of base camped, put everything on their back, and I think my pack after it was all said and done was around 65 pounds. And we when we pulled up to the trailhead, and my buddy looked at me and goes, "We got to go up and over that mountain." I was like, "What?" Like it's extremely daunting. I was like, "How in the world am I going to do that with 65 pounds?" Like I've been training and getting after it, but nothing can prepare you for for the mountain. And it was by God's might, not mine, that we got up and over that thing because it was like a 5 hour hike, I want to say.
Did you I don't know how long total time you had set aside again. I think you mentioned in the email you had 12 days in the field. Were you loaded up for all of that whole time at once?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dude. I mean, being first time 65 pounds for 12 plus days. Yeah, I mean, that's realistic. That's not terrible. Yeah. I mean, food is just a lot. So you start adding on days and
Yep.
yeah, that's a lot of weight.
Absolutely. That was pretty daunting. And so it was, man, when we got off the blacktop, it was, man, it was probably a 4 hour drive down in there. And then, like I said, it was a 5 hour hike. So it was almost a full day just to get to where we set up a base camp. And there was only two trucks when we pulled up to the trailhead. And we got everything out, got our gear ready, and started the trek in, and we didn't think anything of those two trucks. But pretty neat. I want to kind of back up a little bit. When we were getting our packs ready, getting out the truck, getting our clothes on and everything, we looked up and on the front side of the mountain that we were hunting, there was a bull walking across kind of a small meadow or opening right there across this rock face. And so you know me, like I'm pumped, I'm hyped. Like this is the
Yeah.
first time. There's elk right there. Let's go get them.
This is easy.
This is gonna be insane. So yeah, and there's two dudes. Like I said, there's two trucks parked in the parked in the parking lot, and so we get in there 5 hours and get to where they've kind of always camped. Probably the past they've been in this area probably for 4 different trips now, and they kind of got a general area where they camp. It's got running water and everything by it, so it's good base camp. And we get in there, and this whole time, like I said, doing the public land turkey thing over the years, that's the biggest issue for me, in my opinion, is pressure and people. And I was like, man, have y'all run into very many people up here? No, we've never seen anyone up here. We've never run into anybody. I'm like, man, this is incredible, like awesome. And so I'm in awe, just first of all, of the landscape and just the fact that God gave me the health to even be able to be there and the finances and everything that made this come together. So I'm at the trailhead and I'm in awe and we're getting up there and we're pumped. And we're probably, I don't know, 500, 600 yards from where we planned to camp. And we're sitting there and stopped in this meadow and we're just kind of looking out across, resting for a minute. And next thing we know, 6 dudes start walking to us through the woods, and we're like, "Oh no, what are the odds that those 2 trucks we're gonna have 6 people hunting, and they were gonna be pretty much exactly where we were."
Yeah.
So that kind of I don't want to say deflated us, but it did definitely put it in your mind, like, okay, maybe maybe this is going to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And we got there and we talked to these guys. Super nice. I mean, I think anybody that you meet that far back is, and I'm in no way, I'm saying this very humbly, is going to be pretty hardcore, pretty good hunter. You know, somebody that's going to put the effort in to get back there that far. And these guys were, man. They were go-getters, but they were super great guys, super nice. In fact, we had gotten there about, I want to say, I think 3 days. I want to say 3 or 4 days, 4 days, I think, after the opener, and they had been there since the day before the opener, scouting and getting prepared, and obviously hunting 3 days prior to that, and they had killed 2 bulls in 3 days
Wow.
before we had got there. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh no, this place has done got ransacked.
Yeah.
And so we're talking to them, and we're not the type of guys that want to like intrude on somebody or impede on somebody's hunt or mess them up. That's the last thing we want to do because we don't want that on public land. We all hunt public land and have over the years, and so there's kind of a code of ethics that should be followed that isn't always followed. And we just told them like, hey man, we'll go elsewhere. We don't 100% know where we're gonna go, but man, we'll audible and do something different. And they were like, no, absolutely not. They're like, man, there's just an immense amount of land around here. Just man, hunt where you or because we told them where we were gonna camp. They're like, just camp where you were gonna camp, and we'll try our best not to run into each other, but y'all aren't messing us up at all. And so we were very thankful for them at that. That was it was very very respectful of them, very nice of them because they could have been like, no, yeah, we're hunting here, kick rocks. And they were super cool about it. So we went ahead and went on where we were going to set up camp and set up camp. And so the first 3 days, um, well, actually, the first 4 days of our hunt, we had 6 people in the general area of where we were hunting.
Yeah. That's what my head was going. It's like one thing to say, hey, yeah, we'll do our best to get out of your way, etc. But then you start obviously it's elk hunting, right? You want to cover ground or calls and locate, and it's like, hey, is that response in that direction those guys or a bull? Like it just definitely gets different with calling and things like that. Was that did you guys kind of run into those types of practical conflicts, even though you didn't want to in the first
Yes,
few days of hunting?
absolutely. So, the first 3 days, it was silence. We didn't hear anything. Um, and on the third day, um, shortly after daylight, we had heard a bugle, and I was like, okay, cool. I think that was a bugle. Like, I'm not sure. I've never heard a bugle in the wild before, so it's like, yeah, I guess it was. And my buddy, his hearing wasn't the greatest, and he had trouble pinpointing them. And I was like, well, so we made a play on it, and this is probably by the time all this has transpired, it's probably up in the day, probably 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And we're just sitting there kind of uh, eating lunch and taking it easy. Had found a little pond that had lots of elk sign around it, and just was kind of taking it easy, calling every now and then, cow calling, and um, next thing we know, we hear a bugle like 150 yards from us, and to me, it was like I feel like if that's an elk bugling, it would be one potentially louder, and two, it would have more tone to it, I guess, is the best word I can use, kind of more of a deepness to it potentially. And so I wasn't 100% sure that it was an elk. Anywho, we made a play on it, and obviously we're cow calling and raking, and this elk is getting closer and closer, and then I see a guy pop over the horizon. I'm like, well, okay, that kind of confirms that, and it was one of the guys or a couple of the guys from that camp. And we just said, hey man, how you doing? We kind of both understood this was probably going to happen, and no hard feelings, and we just kind of parted ways. And they only had a day or two left in their hunt, and so it was towards the tail end of their hunt, and they were going to be getting out of there. And so we knew the first 4 to 5 days were going to be a pretty good struggle, especially in the media area where we were hunting, because they've always kind of gotten an elk within a few hundred yards of camp. Um, and I think obviously those guys being there and killing two of them, that changed that.
Did you guys talk at that point? Not only, I mean, when I say that point, not just that specific calling encounter and bumping into him, but everything you just said about, hey, these guys killing this close to camp, like maybe this area's a bit hunted out, at least for now. It's been a few days. We haven't heard anything. Like, did you kind of start having conversations about what to do with all that information?
So yeah, we had talked about it even all the way up to this point where we called that guy and we're like, we're not hearing anything. Um, we may have to make a drastic move, but um, each day we would hunt a little further from camp. Um, I think we were all the way up to around 3 miles from camp where we were hunting, and there was elk sign. I mean, there was plenty of elk sign. There was elk in the area, definitely. And I just don't think it. I think obviously the pressure and just the time frame of where they were along the breeding cycle. I don't think they were vocal yet. But there was enough elk sign in the area and fresh stuff that we were like, man, we really don't want to just completely up and move like big time. Let's just keep pushing him further or keep grinding at it and do it in a pretty low intrusive way, best we could. Because like I said, there was elk sign in the area, and we didn't want to leave elk to find elk. No, we weren't hearing them, but the sign was, I mean, you couldn't refute that. And so we were just kind of low impact hunting our way deeper and deeper um, until we finally actually heard a bull on uh, on the fourth day.
How, when you say deeper and deeper, like how how far away from camp are you getting with this? Because you do still have, like, you're still hunting away from your base camp, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we're actually obviously we're coming back to base camp every day, but yeah, we're still hunting away from it. Where we finally got into our first bugle, our first bull. ended up being uh round about 3 miles away with 1,000 foot elevation change, straight up. So um, naturally, the elk had moved to a very hard to reach area, and so that's where we were, and for the next probably 12 days, well for the next I don't know whatever it would have been after that 8 days or so, we traveled that far.
And how
Going
far was camp from the truck?
So camp from the truck was probably, I don't know, probably 7 miles, I want to say, 6 or 7 miles.
Okay. Yeah. I know in your email, like and I can't remember if this was mentioned in Ryan's podcast, but being like, roughly 10 miles deep type thing. So yeah, you're 6, 7 miles from truck to base camp. Now you're consistently hunting another 3 miles out. Like, yeah, you're getting out there.
Yeah. And like I said, going into it the next time, I will, which we can talk about that at the end of end of the podcast, but going into it, I will definitely try to adopt a much more mobile setup and approach to it. But normally in years past, they have not had to do that because there's been elk in the area that they have made base camp every year. But just so happened, um, there were 6 people hunting in this area that there normally aren't. So it made things considerably different. Um, and that's why we were having to walk that far, hike that far, and I don't know. I guess if if you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough. I guess we could we could have definitely probably moved a little bit closer, but it just kind of where we were, it all worked out, and we were able to, if something didn't happen, we still were in a good area where we had other spots in different areas that had elk sign as well. So it was a good base camp. We just had to travel a little bit every morning.
Yeah, I mean the mobility factor, it just saves you those miles, right? Like and that's what's tough with, I mean, I've been there and done that myself where it's like you go into one area and you're getting to know an area and you find a spot that's like, oh, this is a great area or a great hub to like hunt from. We can just set base camp here. I don't know that there's just ever a situation where you can count on that though, right? Like whether it's pressure and or changes in hunting pressure from year to year, it's changes in elk behavior. You just may see like you may see it be good for a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, but yeah, it'd be if someone's hunted somewhere for a decade, they've seen it change, right? And they've had to adapt in some way. Um, especially on these, either over the counter or low, easier to draw hunts. So the mobility factor is just, it saves you some of that time and energy. And it's like, hey, we think we're going to go here. Like this is our plan A, and we think we're going to hunt this area. But if we have to pop stakes and move, being able to do that pretty easy is nice. But yeah, obviously, like you said, you guys made it freaking work.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys, I think, they've just done it a certain way for so long, and that's the way that they've been successful in the past. So that's kind of what they were sticking with, and I don't blame them for that, but
Yeah, for sure.
definitely would like to be more mobile in the future. It definitely opened my eyes. To the point that a bivy system might be on the horizon.
Cool. So you guys, this is like day 4-ish, right? You guys
Yep.
start kind of pushing in, hunting this area. Hear your first actual bull bugle.
Yes, and we had heard him. He was a good ways away. He was probably 400 or 500 yards away down in the bottom of this canyon. And he he bugled probably 30 minutes prior to daylight, and then of course we were bugling in the mornings to locate, and we bugled first probably 30 to 45 minutes before daylight, and within a few minutes he bugled back. And so turkey hunting, we talk about taking the temperature of a turkey a lot. You try to kind of read where he's at, in the intensity of his gobbles. And same with, I felt like the same applied with elk. You could tell this, he wasn't really feeling it, It was very delayed bugles and just kind of wasn't just didn't feel right, I guess is the best way to put it. And so he bugled a few times right up into daylight, and then it was silence the rest of the day. And then on day 5, we went back to that area because there was a bull in that area, and actually ended up getting on two different bulls. So things were starting to slowly heat up, it seemed like. One of the bulls that we got on, I'm pretty sure was the bull we had heard on day 4. Um, he just kind of bugle a few times right at daylight, and then it would be nothing. But this other bull that we got on, I'm pretty sure had cows with him because man, he would bugle back at us, but just constantly kept moving away. And the best I mean, I know if a turkey is doing that, they've got hens, and so I just assumed that he had cows, and we could just never really get ahead of them. So that day was awesome because I got to hear you know a real a real elk bugle, and it was unmistakable. It was like, okay, this is what you're looking for. This is this is what I came. This is what you came for, and it was pretty awesome, man. It was game on after that. Once we actually got to get in the game and work some bulls.
Sweet. So over the course of the next, few days with some bulls located and kind of a shift in your core hunt area, were there any particular encounters that were notable, like either learned from or like, hey, we're getting there, we're getting close, right? That's
Yeah,
one thing that's difficult with archery elk hunting is, yeah, it's not horseshoes or hand grenades and close doesn't count. So like you really have to get it to come together just right.
absolutely, man. So I knew going into it, setup was going to be key. I mean, you have to obviously put yourself in a position to be able to get a shot at the elk when time came, but I misunderestimated obviously it's important. It's a huge deal, but I underestimated the wind. And thermals. Never hunting mountains really. I don't have to deal with that very much when it pertains to my whitetail hunting. And yeah, for some odd reason in the mountains, the wind doesn't blow just one direction. And so we had gotten a very close opportunity on day 6. This bull was just, man, he was amped up and closed probably 300 yards in a matter of minutes, and had the wind decent, in our favor. And this was right at daylight, and the wind stopped. And when it stopped, for some odd reason, it pulled down to him. We were above him, and it pulled down to him. He got our wind, and that was it. Like it. It's amazing. It blew my mind the amount of things that have to come together for you to be able to just get a shot. Um, it's a ton of things that have to come together. Obviously, wind being a huge factor. And I know that's no surprise, but um, just setups in general to set yourself up to have the wind in your favor was the biggest thing because I went from okay, just getting an open spot where you can get a shot to okay, let's take a step back and be more methodical about it. And what's the wind doing right now? What's the wind gonna do when you get to that ridge or whatever, and you start really trying to anticipate what the wind is going to do, and obviously what you think the elk might do. And it just there was a lot more into it than I'm used to. Obviously, with turkey hunting, their eyes are their main tool for them, but the wind aspect was, I don't want to say just a huge learning curve, but it was something I was definitely had to be more conscious of when setting up.
How did you guys? So there's three of you. I know eventually we'll get to the point where one guy it sounds like has to bail.
Mhm.
With the three of you, did you hunt together all the time, the three of you?
So no, we didn't. It just depends on if we found elk and if we found an elk that we felt like we could all make a play on. These guys that I was were hunting with, man, like I said, they're great guys, super awesome guys, and they were willing to pretty well eat a tag just to get me an elk, which I am very grateful for. Just awesome guys, and we were obviously hunting together. I would not say every day. It was probably a couple days we'd hunt together, and then there'd be 2 or 3 days where we wouldn't because we were just trying to find elk. And towards the end of the hunt, we pretty well completely just split up on about day 7 or 8, I would say. One guy kind of went his way. We wanted him to kill an elk, and I didn't want to take any opportunities or anything from him, so he kind of went his way, and we were all splitting up, just trying to find elk, trying to find the best possible opportunity. And me and another guy, Tim, the guy I was telling you about earlier, we hunted together, and he would back up behind me, calling if we had a setup situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. If you are hunting together, how were you guys approaching who's shooter, caller type thing? But yeah, it sounds like they were definitely pretty dang selfless and gave you some love there.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and that was a major blessing in itself just to be up there with, good godly guys that were not selfish. They definitely set their set their wants aside and tried to help me get mine. So yeah.
Sweet man. What yeah, how's the hunt progress and the story progress from here?
After that bull winded us, we got into day 11 and 12 and did not hear any bugles at all. And that's when we ran into Ryan on day 11. Um, it was middle of the day, and we were just trying to strike up anything we possibly could. Just calling and moving, and ended up hearing an elk bugle, or what we thought was an elk bugle, midday, and we thought, oh man, here we go. And similar story to before in the hunt, you get set up and you're basically essentially calling each other up. And um, Ryan was kind of, I had a small ridge between him and I. We had heard it. I heard him bugle at, like, I don't know, it was probably 80 yards, and I knew this ridge was between me and this so-called elk. So I kind of made what we call in turkey hunting a power move, and I just got to the top of that ridge so I could just peek over and see. And I had an air knocked. I'm locked and loaded, and I pop over the top, and there's Ryan over this ridge, and his eyes are huge. He's like, "Oh crap!" He's like, "Hey," I was like, "Man, what's up?" I was in Rambo mode, so
Yeah.
you know, it was cool. We sat and talked to him. Like I said, Ryan, I mean, you had him on your podcast. Great guy, super nice guy, just a go-getter. Um, commend him greatly for being out there by himself, getting after it, and ended up being successful. So, ran into him twice, basically same type scenario on day 11 and 12. No bugles, but we did bugle up Ryan. So that
Yeah.
that was what happened on those days.
We're getting late into it. Are you, I mean, you're having some success and encounters, and as you said up front, I think your expectations were not obviously unrealistic or overly high, but at the same time, it's also like, man, we're late into this trip. Is it going to happen? Like, yeah, like
Oh
where's your
yeah.
headspace at with that?
So that was day 7 and 8. I think I got my days mixed up. That was day 7 and 8. And after running into Ryan 2 days and not hearing any bugles, he had actually, we had spoken, and uh, I mean, he's a good hunter. You could tell, obviously, we were putting pressure on this area, and he was like, man, I'm just going to go, because he was mobile and he just did his own thing and went to a completely different area. But at the end of it, we were day 8, 2 days in a row of no bugles and running into somebody. Man, it was starting to wear a little bit. Just everything was wearing on you. You're 8 days in. not the best food in the world. Some of it's, most of it's good, but you get tired of the same type of food 8 days in a row, and
Yeah.
you're cold and sleep's decent, but not obviously like your bed, and you get to missing your family and my wife, and um, I'm a youth pastor by vocation back home here, and I was missing the kiddos, man. They're awesome, and just all these things that you're so used to in everyday life, you get to missing, man. And it gets to wearing on you, and you're like, golly, 8 days, and I've not even come close to an opportunity. We had that one bull coming in pretty hard that winded us, and that would be, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that an opportunity because to me, an opportunity is when an elk gets in bow range and, I might potentially have a shot, but he never really got, I would say, to bow range. But we're 8 days in, pretty tired, pretty getting homesick a little bit, and yeah, starting to feel the wear of the hunt, and just man, just got to the point where just blessed to have my faith, blessed that I have that to rely on. That I didn't become a Christian until I was probably 30 years old, and started just diving into church. I had some things happen, and ended up just made me rely on God, and so I would say my faith in this hunt played a huge part for me as far as the mental toughness that it took to continue on. Because it was definitely by his strength and not mine, man. And the guys that I was with, they were good Christian guys, and we just, we would pray every morning before we got up and would make that 3 mile hike. We would pray every morning and just put God first in the center of it, and um, doing that changed my perspective, man. God just kind of opened my eyes and told me, "Hey, man, look, no, you don't have an elk. No, you don't have one. But guess what? Look at the sights and sounds and smells that you've got to experience, man." And that was the biggest thing. That's when it put it in perspective for me on day 8 that I have all these blessings. I have so many things to be thankful for. That elk is the last thing on, that you need to be worried about. Like, be thankful for, the fact, one, that you even have health to be on that mountain. Two, that you got to see and experience things that the vast majority of people will never get to experience. To hear an elk bugle, 10 miles deep in the in the back country, and you're just, I don't know, it's puts it into perspective. I think so many times, and I know I have, especially on these out of state turkey hunts, you get pressure on you to kill an animal. Like, that's what I want to do. I'm here to kill something. Well, no, let's pump the brakes and put it into perspective what you're doing. Killing an animal is icing on the cake. You need to be there for the adventure, and God definitely, spoke to me. Was like, "Hey, man, look, and I was wore out going into this hunt just between preparation and working a couple jobs and, serving at church, whole 9 yards. I was burned out, man. And the main prayer that I had going into this hunt was, that God would just kind of recharge my batteries and refill my cup so that, I could be the man that he's called me to be. And you wouldn't think going on a elk hunt in the backcountry would do something like that for you because it's so physically demanding. But man, once I got my perspectives right and was just thankful for the fact that I was able to be on that mountain and experience those things, it changed a lot for me and my mindset on day 8.
Yeah. Dude, I 100% relate to all that. And I mean, it's different now being where I'm at with EXO, with the podcast, with more hunting opportunity. But like my roots going back to the first time I went out west and spent a week in the mountains and had that experience. It was exhausting and so recharging at the same time. And it became like when I went for the first time, I was like, man, I don't know. Like I love the idea of this, but the sacrifice of time and money and like, is that something I'm going to be able to do with any consistency, like wife and young kids at home? Like it's just a lot. And after the first year, I started to see the value in it, but then especially like year two, three, like I was like, man, it is worth every bit of it just because it makes me better the whole rest of the year. Like it's such a good reset and recharge and
Absolutely.
escape and mental break and just like the clarity that comes from being in the mountains without all the distractions. There's so much like intangible personal value for me outside of just the hunting, which the hunting itself is amazing. Like being close to elk, hearing them bugle, hopefully filling a tag and filling the freezer, like all that's great. But you set aside any of that in those quote unquote unsuccessful trips. Like if you have the right perspective, um, just speaking for me, and it sounds the same for you, there's still so much value that comes out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the biggest thing. Like I said, when I realigned my perspective, it was almost like a burst of energy. I was like, okay, like just be glad to be here. I know that sounds kind of, but be glad to be here because there's a lot of people that will never do this. And so be thankful and just take take advantage of all the time that you have up here and soak everything up because when you get back home, it's gonna be right back to the grind. Now, don't get me wrong, I was ready to get home and be with my wife and you know, church family and family, but I needed that time up there to just recharge those batteries, and that's exactly what it was. So
Yeah, sweet man.
so yeah, I mean, moving on to day nine, things things got a little different after day eight. Things started to heat up for
Tell us
sure.
about it, man. Let's get into it.
Man, so yeah, so day nine, we decided to go to a different spot, something different from where we had kind of been getting on these bulls, and after the run-in with Ryan, we're like, let's try something different. And we ended up kind of hunting this same canyon, but from a different angle, I guess, and on a different little bit ridge system where you could hear and see a little bit more, I guess. So we got around. It wasn't quite as far as we were hiking in, but it was still a pretty solid hike. And when we got to this new spot or new area where we started out at where we were hunting prior, you could not hear elk down in this canyon from where we were. You had to drop down on this other ridge system to be able to hear these elk, and it was you were able to look across a big canyon, and it had some really good glassing spots on it, and that's something we had never really done. Throughout this hunt, it's typically where we were, it was pretty thick. And so that wasn't really an option. But in this particular spot, it was. We actually got on a bull right at daylight that morning. And it it didn't sound like the bulls that I'd heard in the past. It was kind of real weak sounding, real whistly. You could tell it definitely was a younger bull. And stupid wind, man. You know how it goes. He got there to about 80 yards, and I don't know, the wind stopped, and thermals pulled our scent straight to him, and we never heard that joker again. And it was just frustrating. It was like, golly, man. The two, close calls that we have both times have been absolutely ruined by thermals. And it was like, yeah, we're so close, but so far. And so after day nine, my spirits were still higher because man, we'd got on a bull. Like that's what we came there to do, and 2 days of no bugles and getting on one, you're amped back up. So we roll into day 10, and we had gotten a snow the day prior on day 9, like a 2 inch snow that evening, which was pretty awesome. Like I'm used to South Arkansas, September, dude. It's like 100 degrees and 80% humidity with mosquitoes everywhere. Like there's no shot you're getting snow. And so to have snow and everything up there, man, that was awesome. That was super cool. And obviously elk like snow too, because when we got to that new spot that we were talking about, we had heard a different bull down in this canyon. And this dude, man, he was on fire, but he had a much deeper bugle, and a shorter bugle than any of the other elk that we have heard that whole trip. I looked over at my buddy and he laughed because I was like, man, that thing kind of sounds like a red stag. Like he was just real deep and nasally. I was like, man, that's got to be the man. He goes, yeah, it probably is. And just the way he was sounding, and we tried to get on him, but he was moving away. He had cows. I mean, he was the man in that area. You could tell, and it was just cool, man, because I hadn't heard any bull or any elk that sounded like that. And that was a full grown elk. And so that was cool because you were able to see tracks in the snow and you're like, oh my gosh, man. Like there's more elk around us than we think there is. Them things are like ghosts. I mean,
Hmm.
if you don't hear them, you think they're non-existent, but that fresh snow on the ground, you could see tracks and fresh tracks and sign everywhere. And it was like, oh my gosh, man, like we're in them. They're just not quite there in the breeding cycle yet, you know. So that it lifted our spirits tremendously. Um, and after we had kind of got on that bull that morning and he moved off with cows, we kind of worked this rim out and found a glassing spot across this canyon. Um, and it had a meadow on the side of it, like a small meadow and a little bit of like a rock facing to it. And so we were able to glass a lot of country from up there. So the majority of the rest of that day, we just spent up there glassing and kind of just calling every now and then, trying to strike one up. But we didn't have any luck doing that. But we just sat there glassing for the rest of the day, and went back to camp. And that brought us into day 11. That same morning, instead of trying to get down where we had heard that elk before, for me, turkey hunting, you start high, stay high, and slowly work your way down. So, one, just from the listening aspect, but two, it gives you the upper hand on setups for a turkey. And I just figured it was the same way with bulls or with elk. And so we went into day 11. I was like, let's just go to that glassing spot. Let's sit there and glass for that morning and listen and be, since we're on the second to last day, let's be aggressive. If we hear one down in there, let's just get after him, you know. And we were split up. It was me and my buddy Tim on this rim in our glassing spot, and across this canyon kind of was where we were hunting like 3 days prior to finding this new spot. And the other guy, his name was Chris, he went over there and hunted that morning. So we can kind of see general area of where he was at, but not like immediate area. So we were sitting there glassing and it's breaking day. And Tim's like, man, I see movement across on that meadow. And next thing we know, there's a probably anywhere from 10 to 12 cows and calf come up on this kind of this rock face slash meadow. I don't even know what you would call it, but it was an opening. It was one of the only openings we could see. And they come up and they're sitting there and they're feeding, and there's a couple calves bedded up, and it was beautiful watching it because there was still some snow on the trees and stuff, and the sun was coming up, and man, it was just one of those moments you're like, wow. Like it's probably one of them things you see on a hunting video or a National Geographic show. And so we were just kind of in awe watching and we're looking through our binoculars and the next thing we know, man, this big 6x6 comes up out of the canyon and just starts nudging these cows and working on. It's just like, oh my gosh, man. Like, this is what you come for. And I honestly, man, like I said earlier in the podcast, I didn't expect to see something like that, you know, to get to watch that, to get to watch them, unprovoked and watch what elk do. Um, man, it was incredible. And he went around nudging his harem and pushing them higher up towards kind of where our other buddy was hunting at, and it was neat because there was a little calf sitting on a rock ledge, and the whole herd had kind of moved off, but she was still sitting there, and it was cool, man, because he was like, you could tell that bull was like, all right, it's time to go. So he kind of went over there to her and kind of hooked her a little bit with his antler, and she got up and started following the rest of the herd, and he just pushed them away from us, up that ridge system that was away from us that we thought our buddy was on, and we were pumped, man, because we didn't really have a great way of communication, but we were like, man, he's working towards our buddy, and we were hoping he was going to get a shot, and ended up we got back to camp that evening, and our buddy was already back at camp, and we had told him about what he had saw. I was like, man, y'all should have went after him. He goes, I was actually a good ways further down from where you are talking. We were like, golly, we had stayed from making a play on him because we didn't want to mess our buddy up in any way, and lo and behold, he wasn't around him.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience to get to watch that, but kind of, you know, heartbreaking that on our last full day, we kind of missed an opportunity there for sure.
Yeah. They're just so cool to just watch elk be elk though, right? Like just to
Oh man.
observe and watch a bull work cows and that's neat.
Yeah, it was a sight for sure. It was pretty awesome. Was definitely blessed to get to see that, and I think a lot of people don't get to see that because a lot of times, like you call up a bull, it's just he's coming at you. You don't get to see,
Yeah.
you know, unprovoked how they act, and man, that was really cool.
Yeah. Super
And
cool.
man, so like I said, we had got back to camp and started talking to our buddy, and he wasn't feeling really well, man. He had some blood pressure problems, and had like one of his foot kind of go a little numb on him, and it, we were definitely concerned about that, and he was as well. And he was like, guys, I think the safest thing to do is I'm gonna pack my stuff up. And this was just a day prior. Well, we were only gonna hunt for a couple hours the next morning, pack up camp and head back down to the truck. Because I'm gonna pack up early and get back to the truck, in case something is going on. I would feel safer back at the truck where I could be gotten to more easy. And we absolutely understood that. But, we were going to go back with him, but he was just like, y'all stay, y'all keep hunting. So, we did, felt bad. We were like, well, we hope he gets back to the truck okay. But luckily, he was able to reach out to his wife, and his wife reached out to us and let us know he got back to the truck safely. Um, so that was that was the day before our last day. And going into the 12th day, man, uh I was sitting in my tent, and after seeing that elk and everything, man, my cup was full. I mean, it had been 11 days of just awesomeness, being being out there and kind of just getting to it's crazy because it's like it's so quiet. That was the biggest thing that stood out to me when we were out there that I was paying it. It was quiet, man. You don't hear trains and cars and down here, there's lots of logging and stuff that's going on, so you don't hear the skidders running, and it's just real, man, it's just quiet, and it's nice. And it just, I don't know, man, on that last night in that tent, I just was reflecting on the whole hunt, like, golly, man, like what an awesome adventure and experience just to be here. And if I'm being honest, going into that next day, I mean, my cup was full. I was completely fine with not killing an elk at all. Like, was completely fine with it. And I knew going into the next morning, like we had a good general idea of where that bull might be, but I mean, still odds are slim. We only had about 2 hours to hunt that next morning. So we had talked about it that night, and I told him, I was like, man, it was a big to do for me to get up here and be able to do this. And we were just like, man, and it was for him as well. And we were like, let's go to the end. We're here. Let's don't pack up a day early. Don't just, you know, call it a morning and pack up that next morning and go home. And like, if we have 2 hours to hunt, we're gonna hunt for 2 hours, because this might be the last time we get to come up here for 4 or 5 years. And so man, we were going to grind it out to the end. And I told myself going into this hunt, like, don't let a minute slip away that you can be out there and be hunting. Like, enjoy every second of it and soak it up. And so that's what we did, man. And just so happened that night, I don't know, I'm not used to, like, we don't do any glassing at all, from the type of hunting that I've done. We've done a little bit of Western turkey hunting, and you glass a little bit there, but it's not like what we did the day before. And dude, that night I had the worst night of sleep I've ever had in my life. It was awful. I don't know if it was a tension headache or what from glassing all day, but dude, I had a pounding headache all night and just did not sleep worth a flip. And that alarm went off on that last morning. And I'm not gonna lie, for a split second, I was like, man, packing up and going home sounds pretty good. But I heard my buddy rustling in the tent beside me. I was like, "No, no, we're doing it. Let's go." And so we hopped out of the tents and ended up making that. It was like I said, it was about well, to where we were going, where the elk was. It was like 3.5 miles to get around to where we felt like he was going to be. And that was that was a worst hike out of the whole time. It was just like, oh man, this is rough. It just took a lot to get back, into the hunt. You know what I mean? From a terrible night's sleep to knowing it's the last day, sleep deprived, just everything is kind of going against you. And it just took me a while to get in that mental headspace of all right, let's go. Let's lock in. Let's get after it. And man, I can remember we, just praying that morning, hiking all the way up to that ridge system. It was just like, God, please just keep me thankful, keep me humble. God, just give me the energy, give me the steps to get up this mountain to enjoy the last couple hours of this trip that you blessed me with. And just praying that the whole time because, like I said, I wasn't feeling it, but we did it anyways. And we had kind of made a game plan that night. We were like, we've been doing a decent amount of bugling, locating and even calling it at bulls because the first couple bulls that the ones that we had actually called in were from bugling, not really much cow calling. But I was just like, let's change it up. It's the last couple hours. Let's cow call primarily. And so we started working. It broke day. We had not heard a bugle, and we had made it a plan to get kind of aggressive and work down into where we had glassed the bull the day before. And so we started kind of made the plan to sound like a cow and a calf working through the timber. I was about 30 to 40 yards ahead of him at times, and we were just kind of cow calling back at each other, working our way down, keeping the wind in our favor, to where we felt like this bull was. And about, I don't know, probably 45 minutes into doing that, I heard or I didn't hear anything. My buddy thought he had heard something. He turned around and looked. He goes, "Oh my gosh, man." He goes, "There's a spike looking at us right now." And I slowly turned my head, and yeah, sure enough, like 60 yards from us, there's in the wide open, there's a spike just staring us down. I was like, "This is incredible. Like this is what you come here for." And obviously, we weren't going to shoot a spike. He ended up kind of seeing us and seeing something's wrong and took off running. And I can remember thinking in my mind, like, these things are huge. Like, I'm used to a southern whitetail, and if you kill a big deer in Arkansas, like on the east side of the state, it's mostly like Delta and agriculture, and that's where your bigger deer are. And like, I can remember killing one of the biggest deer I've killed over on that side of the state, and it was probably a 5.5, year old whitetail, and he was, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably anywhere from like 195 to 205 on the hoof. So to me, I mean, that's the biggest animal I've ever seen, up close in the wild, and that thing was a horse, man. Like that was eye-opening. Like these things are huge, huge, and I thought to myself right then and there, man, if I actually did kill one, that would be, I don't even know how we'd get this thing out of there. And so, man, we continue on with the hunt, and we kept that same game. We're like, hey, it works. Let's just keep on, heading down towards where we saw that bull. And I'm calf calling, he's cow calling. We're sounding like a couple elk back and forth moving through the timber. And about 20 minutes after we had called up that spot, man, the oh gosh, we cow called, and instantly right after one of our cow calls, we were about 20 yards apart. Just the most loudest, deepest, nastiest bugle I'd heard on this whole trip at about 100 yards from us erupted. And our eyes, I wish we could have had a picture of it, because I'm sure our eyes was as big as volleyballs, because we were like, oh my gosh, like he's right here, you know. And so he moved 20 yards behind me, further back, and I moved 20 yards ahead of him, because there was a little ridge, there was a rise there that I knew I had to get um, to shoot. Like if I was going to be able to get a shot at this elk, I had to get to this rise, and I had about a lane kind of to my left that was about 30 yards, had a little hole that was open, and to my right was another small lane. But I had a spruce tree kind of right in front of me, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 yards in front of me, real bushy spruce tree. And I was trying to get in front of it, but I'd gotten to right, like I said, about 4 yards behind it. And the next thing I know, man, I hear hoofs just and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right here. So I stop, I freeze behind that spruce tree, and he runs up to probably 7 steps from me behind that spruce tree. And my buddy's behind me, he's cow calling. He doesn't know the elk is this close. And I can remember thinking like it almost felt like a dream. You know how things kind of just go in slow motion? You're like, is this actually even happening? Like, is there a an elk in front of me like at 7 steps right now?
Hmm.
And so like I'm in a little bit of a daze, and I kind of snap out of it and like, okay, here we go. Like, don't screw this up, because he was facing me at like 7 steps and I had no shot. And so I finally hooked up to my bow, and I was like, I don't know which way he's going to go, but you need to be ready. And I had my sight set on 30, because I'd ranged that lane very quickly in the middle. I mean, this is This all happened in seconds. I mean, I would probably say 30 seconds. This all happened from the first time we had heard him bugle at like 100 or 90 yards. And he runs up to 7 steps. I'm hooked up to my bow, and I'm looking through this spruce tree, and this bull's looking straight through me, and I see the headgear he's toting, and I about lost it. And he's sitting there at 7 steps and just rips one right in my face.
Jeez.
Man, look, if that don't light your fire, your wood's wet because man, that was the most incredible thing that has ever happened to me. 7 steps, this huge bull is in front of me and just rips a bugle and about busts my eardrums. And so I was pretty shook up before, and by then I'd pretty much gone to pieces.
Yeah, yeah,
I've pretty much lost it. And I've never frozen in a hunting situation. Have always kept it pretty pretty collected until after the shot. But right, man, that shook me. And I've shot competitively and worked in an archery shop for a very long time, and was just blessed to have shot competitively and had that situation to shoot a lot. And even obviously leading up to this, I shot a lot. And he had caught movement. I don't know if he caught me or Tim or what, but he had caught some movement and but wasn't sure. So he was trying to kind of slink his way out of there. He didn't like blow out of there. He was just like trying to get downwind and see, kind of try to smell what he thought he saw. And so he's kind of sleeking around to my left, and I had a cow call in my mouth, and he hit that open, and I cow called, and man, I just kind of blacked out. It was like I was just blessed, like I said just a minute ago, from all the bow shooting I've done over the years. It just kind of muscle memory kicked in, I guess. And I don't know how I got that bow drawn and how I anchored and everything come together, but I can just remember him stopping at 30 yards. My sight is at 30 yards. I mute at him, stopped him in this hole. The pin settles right on his heart, and I shoot a hinge release, and the click, my hinge clicks. I'm locked in, pins on it, and the shot breaks. And I'm shooting lighted nocks, and at that time I had a Sever hybrid 1.5 was the broadhead I was shooting. So still a mechanical, and I wasn't just fully um, confident that I was going to get a pass through, but ended up getting a pass through, and it blew through him. And I thought to myself, what in the world just happened? My buddy runs up, and the bull would you'd hear him stumbling, running off, and he was, oh, he's dead. We were high-fiving, going nuts, man, freaking out, and get up there to the arrow, and it's drenched in blood. And man, we just go to praying right then and there, just thanking God for that opportunity, and praying that he's at the other end of this blood trail, and that he would just, guide our footsteps to him. Man, that elk didn't go 40 yards. He piled up within 40, 45 yards of where I shot him. And it was incredible, dude. It was amazing.
dang, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was
So
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
So you guys are, I mean, you were down to the wire on time. Now with a bull down, is this, had you accounted for time of like, hey, if we actually kill something, this, you guys are freaking deep to get this thing taken care of? Or is this like a, hey, we gotta, we gotta touch base with home, tell them we're gonna be late to work? What was just that logistics like?
Man, from from the moment we found the elk until we left from the truck was absolute chaos. They had to get home, I had to get home, and so we had a strict time frame that we were on. And literally my buddy, we talk about it. I didn't get just a lot of time to just soak in what happened. It didn't really hit
Yeah.
the truck ride home, but because as soon as we found him, obviously, we prayed, took some pictures, we're high-fiving, and then the work began. We got to get this thing off the mountain because it was actually pretty warm. Um, I don't know, it was probably 55 degrees and 55, 60 degrees. And we were like, we've got to get off the mountain. And from that moment on, there wasn't a workout I could do that would prepare you for packing just two guys, you know, we were just trying to get it back to base camp because there was an outfitter in the area that would pack out the meat for you. We had planned to just pack everything out all the way down to the truck, but on the last day like that, we didn't really have an option. Like
Right.
it was hot. The last day we had to get home. Um, so we had to call them, and so we spent a whole day getting that elk down from where I had shot him back to the base camp, and they brought mules up and uh, grabbed grabbed the elk the following morning, um, and we just followed them down with camp back to the truck.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. As deep as you guys were, not only for time, but just, yeah, the physicality of that. I mean, two guys packing a big, mature bull that far that's no small feat.
And had it been day three, four, five, six, seven, I mean, it would have been no big deal. We had, three guys, and we're just going to pack it down, back to the truck if someone had killed, and they could have taken it back to, town and done whatever that needed to be done. But, leave it to me to wait till the last day to shoot one.
Yeah.
And we didn't have an option. We had to call in reinforcements to get that Joker back down to the truck.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that, man. Dude, so cool. I don't want to abruptly cut it short. Obviously, been going for a while, but I am curious with the bit of time we have left. As you said, like this is, yeah, I mean, it's just, dude, it's a freaking dream experience of your first elk hunt, and in many ways, like the fact that it does come down to the end. I mean, the first archery bull I killed was similar. It was last day I shot it. I mean, it was the last day we had to hunt, and I shot it not too long before sunset. Like it just came down to the wire, and I look back at that as being so special because you go through all the ups and downs and the grind, and I think that just makes you appreciate it more. Um, I know it's similar for you with that, but yeah, any other takeaways, whether it's practical stuff, lessons learned, stuff that worked, stuff that didn't, just touch on with the remaining time we got.
Yeah, man, not just a whole lot. I mean, going into it, you learn the stuff you need to switch up for the following year. And man, the biggest takeaway for me was just, man, just be grateful while you're out there. It's not always about killing something as much as you want to. Just be grateful for where you're at. And another huge takeaway, which is the main point that I wanted to drive home, is just my faith, man. Without God, none of that would have been possible. Just the way that this whole podcast has worked out, and even getting to come on here, I'm so humbled, and I appreciate you for allowing me to come on here. But best decision I ever made 4 years ago was accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. We're all gonna die someday, and you know, we all we all have sins to pay for, and man, just accepting Jesus Christ and knowing that I have salvation was the biggest part that played into success, man. Because without the relationship I have with Him, um, man, I couldn't have made it through that hunt. If I'm just being honest, and I just urged anyone that may be wondering about Christianity, if they have any questions or anything, just look me up on Facebook, or they can reach out to you and maybe point on my way. But man, that's the main thing I wanted to get across, that I in no way deserved any of this success in any way, shape, or form, but for some reason, God saw it fit that He would bless me with that.
What's up, man? Appreciate you taking the time, joining, sharing the story. Jacked for you, and great to
Yeah,
meet you, man.
thank you for having me on, brother.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in and joining us for this conversation, and thanks to Blake for sharing it with us. If you guys are enjoying the show, it helps us tremendously if you can leave a rating or review in your podcast app. or even just share the show directly with a friend who may benefit from it. As always, appreciate all the feedback and support. If you want to get a hold of us directly, just send an email to podcast@exomountaingear.com. And if you haven't yet, be sure to hit subscribe or follow in your podcast app so that you receive future episodes automatically, and we'll talk to you soon.